Hey there everyone, how's it going? My name is Lamriel. Welcome everybody to FFXIV. In today's video, I'd like to talk about my approach to raiding and what do I personally do when it comes to raiding. Now, I've had raiding experience in World of Warcraft. I used to go pretty hardcore with it, like pushing heroics and mythic back in Warlords of Draenor and trying my best at pushing progression raiding. I've kind of stopped doing that when university started becoming a little bit more serious for me, and I started doing raiding a little bit more casually on the side. As of recent, I've been doing Primal Extremes and Alexander Savage, going all the way from the very first boss all the way to the creator himself on Savage. And that's been a pretty wonderful and fun journey, and I can't wait to complete it before Stormblood is out. But I want to kind of talk about my experience of how I take on raiding and what do I exactly do. This is going to be a more personalized guide and introduction to how to think of raiding and how to see raiding when it comes to starting off raiding. This is not a... I guess this is kind of a generalized guide to how to raid. It's more going to talk about my methodologies and my perspective on things rather than, you know, the exact strategies of every single boss fight. Now, the first thing you should do is understand that raiding is a trial and error process. I can relate it a little bit more in IT perspective. I recently graduated with a bachelor's in information technology, and while I don't want to talk about it every single time as if I'm, you know, humble bragging, in information technology and when working on computers or servers, you have to understand that it's never going to be a perfect fix. You have to find what the problem is, try out a solution, and if it doesn't work out, come back at it with a different mindset. And you just got to keep trying and be open to trying out different things and new approaches. That's pretty much what raiding is. If you have the ability to understand that you will never get it perfect on the first try, or you have a very low chance of getting it perfect on the first try, and understand that you may have to take on different approach to raiding and different fights, then you have the mentality to raid, and I would like to welcome you to your very first raid, or your very first primal if you're taking on a primal extreme. And for number 2, you know what they say, knowing is half the battle, and knowing what you're up against is probably the most important thing. Since we have this utility called YouTube that we can utilize to look up how other people take on certain raids or certain fights, you can always look up different perspectives. I mean, I can even go right now on YouTube and type in Zervan Extreme, Bard perspective, or Machinist perspective, or Tank perspective, or Healer perspective, and see how other players in Final Fantasy XIV community take on a certain fight. Now, obviously, there are different ways to approach it, and even certain regions have different ways of how they approach particular mechanics when it comes to raiding. For example, if you ever heard of Skip Soar or Disband from Zervan Extreme, it was kind of a meme in North America at least, where most parties in North America would try to put together a static where they only have one tank, as much DPS as possible, particularly a tank being a warrior, and try to skip the sword mechanic, the very first sword mechanic for the fight. And while the North American audience was trying to skip the mechanic and rather bypass the mechanic using high amount of DPS, I hear that players over in Japan have a different approach to the fight in general and to raiding in general. They play a little bit more conservatively and focus on group survival so that they can last longer and finish the fight together and finish the fight with the most amount of DPS and the most amount of time and survivability, rather than focusing on just going ham at a boss and trying to bypass certain mechanics and trying to push past certain mechanics. So it's more about survivability and make sure that majority of your team members get to stay alive throughout the fight so they can be in longer and contribute to the fight even greater, rather than just going ham and trying to find ways to bypass certain nuisances or certain pesky mechanics. And obviously it's really good to learn from this, and being able to use the internet and written guides and macros that players make in-game and videos and live streams is also a really good way to learn about the fights. So definitely utilize things like YouTube, things like written guides, Reddit posts, and multiple perspectives and multiple approaches that different guide makers on YouTube have. So let's say you watch Mr. Happy, go watch Mistech, go watch another person take on a guide, go watch a written guide, go watch how players in Japan take it on, go watch how players in Germany, France, North America take it on, and try to see how different classes take on certain mechanics in certain fights. Number 3 is learning not to panic. If you ever get into a fight, and I am very much guilty of it as well, and a lot of players that never really done anything before, they're gonna be guilty of it, and it's completely fine for us to panic when we're doing something brand new. But in order to learn about the fight, you gotta make sure you're not panicking. In fact, whenever you're doing a fight for the very first time, you need to think of yourself as an observer. Because if you are able to observe and be calm and rational about it, you'll be able to absorb more knowledge and information about what is going on in a particular fight or what is going on with a particular mechanic. If you're panicking, you're not watching the fight, you're worrying about how well you're doing, how low your health is, how everybody else is dying, and how you're not able to concentrate on the battle. Panicking doesn't really help you when it comes to learning about a fight. It's more of a hindrance rather than help. So learning how to stay calm throughout the fight is very important. When it comes to learning how to play a class, practice makes perfect, and as you can see, I'm playing Machinist. In order for me to learn how to properly play Machinist and how to do the best at possible damage as I can as a Machinist, I need to learn how to play the class. And in order for me to learn and instill the learnings that I, teach myself when it comes to playing the class, I need to keep practicing and practice and practice and practice, both on a training dummy and in a raid. That's actually why I went ahead and did Done Scathe here, my weekly Done Scathe as a Machinist. So I would remember and try to incorporate a different opener and try to practice a different opener for Machinist. I've been wanting to improve as a Machinist for a long time because it's a really fascinating class, and I really like the ability to have a gun and wield it and play almost like a Bard-esque style, but with a different approach to it. Machinist and Bard are very similar to one another, but they play differently, and that really fascinates me, and it really makes me want to learn how to play Machinist properly. In order to practice such a rotation or try out a different opener for Machinist or any other class that I'm learning how to play, I can usually come over to Stone, Sky, and Sea, a training dummy center, I guess you can say, that allows you to practice against a particular boss. You select a boss and you are timed, and you have to defeat the training dummy within a specific time in order to make sure that you have the optimal DPS for a specific boss. For example, for here I chose XIV, the highest one available for it, and I wanted to see if I would have the DPS necessary to take on XIV. Now, this is not the best way to test against whether you can do XIV or not. When you're doing XIV, there are a lot of mechanics to avoid. You have buffs from Astrologians, buffs from Dragoons, and other aspects that influence how well you do, or, will be a hindrance to how well you do. Different mechanics to avoid, and DPS alone is not half, it's only half the battle, it's not the entire battle. There are a lot of mechanics to avoid within the actual XIV fight, but if I can at least maintain a proper amount of DPS and do enough damage to defeat the training dummy before the time is up, I can at least assure myself and assure my party members that I have the damage necessary. And as well as trying out my different rotation of different openers on this training dummy, it allows me to practice and nail down and hone down my ability to output the most amount of DPS, or try a different opener, or try a different approach, or different method, or alter my rotation a little bit. Do something and see where I can improve. I can even record myself here, and as I'm watching this back right now, as I'm talking to you right now through this video, I'm seeing the mistakes that I've done. I'm seeing what I should have done better. I should have waited for cooldowns to reset. I should have used abilities a little bit sooner than others. I should have timed my cooldowns a little bit better. I should have done a less sloppy of an opener. There are always ways you can improve, and the best way you can do it is by practice and practice and practice and nailing down and trying something new, practicing again and improving. Because, it's an MMO, it's all gonna be kind of out of practice. The more practice, the better you will do. Now, in this next part, we're gonna be talking a little bit about something that you probably faced, and please let me know if this is actually any relatable. So, let's say you're playing, and you're doing a boss fight, and you die. And it's been happening for a couple of times, and you're getting a little bit frustrated, you're getting upset, and you're thinking to yourself, why? Why do I keep dying? I avoided the mechanic, I stood in that one thing how I'm supposed to. Why am I dead? This just happens third or fourth time in a row now. Oh my god, it's so frustrating. I'm doing my hardest, I'm trying my best, I'm playing my earnest, and it's not working. What's the point? Yeah, I would just die again. It's whatever. I'll just die again. Doesn't matter. Same thing, same old, same old. It's gonna die again. It's whatever. It doesn't matter at this point. What's the point of even trying? I should just stop. There's no reason. I should stop. It's not worth it. It's whatever. Not worth it. If you ever find yourself in this kind of situation, the problem is the mentality. You have to change the way you think about it. See, I die a lot in MMOs. In Final Fantasy XIV, throughout this Road to Alexander, I've died a lot. Throughout doing XIV, I've died a lot. What happens at that point is I'm thinking to myself, alright, I died to a mechanic. Now, let's think about what I died to exactly, how the mechanic impacted me, and what is the best way for me to avoid the mechanic in the future and try to mitigate it. Because see, at that point, when you die in an MMO, something where you die in a boss fight, at that point you can start learning on how to avoid dying again and how to avoid certain mechanics and how to keep pushing forward, how to keep pressing on and improving yourself. Because see, getting upset over it and getting emotional over a death in an MMO, it's not worth it. It's not as big of a deal. I mean, if I got upset every single time I died in Final Fantasy XIV, and y'all, if you ever see me raid, you see that we die a lot. We just keep going at it. We keep going at it. We keep throwing ourselves at it. We keep trying to be level-headed. We don't let it take over us emotionally. We don't let it hinder us too much. We just keep going at it, and we just keep trying and trying and trying and improving and getting better at it and practicing. Because at the end of the day, it's all practice. It's all about how hard you can throw yourself at it and how much you can learn from the experience. And as you keep going and going and trying to improve yourself, you will notice improvements. You will notice your team and your composition and your static improving as well. And players in your party will get better at it, and you'll be able to understand the situation or read the situation or react to it accordingly. Because at the end of the day, it's kind of like muscle memory. I mean, even when it comes to computers at this point, when it comes to me searching something up or diagnosing anything, I already know by hand and, I already know by heart how to diagnose a particular issue, how to diagnose a particular problem, how to check something if something is not right. Yeah, I know how to diagnose this kind of things, and I just learned it by heart. When it comes to an MMO, it's the same thing as anything else. You try, you learn from your mistakes, you try again. You keep going at it until you improve it, until you fully get it nailed down, until you fully succeed. That's really it. That's really it. You can't get upset over it. If you start getting upset over an MMO, first of all, it's a video game. It's not that big of a deal. It's just a video game. You shouldn't have to be upset over a video game. Second of all, there's always room to improve. And that's what raids are for. You go into it, take on a really difficult challenge, you learn from your mistakes, you go into it again and succeed. And you keep going at it and going at it and keep going and keep trying. Don't discourage yourself, because you start noticing that you are improving, that you are doing better, that you are coordinating with your team a little bit more. And as you take on complex mechanics, and some of them really are complex and frustrating. We're currently stuck right now on Alexander 6 Savage, and back in the day, apparently it was called the static breaker. Like, statics and free companies would just break up and raiding would just stop because of some of these fights. They're difficult. They're meant to be difficult. They're meant to be a challenge. The best way to overcome the challenge is by trying your best at it and keep working to improve. If you're not looking at ways you can improve, then you're not really growing as a player. And at that point, you start beating yourself up. So don't beat yourself up. And the last thing I really got when it comes to this kind of, this kind of topic is have fun. Raiding is supposed to be for fun, I mean, yeah, definitely there are some groups out there that are working on progression, and the progression is the fun part for them. Being able to go to the last part and farm the boss to get the best weapons and best gear, that's fun for them. At the end of the day though, as long as you're having fun, you're having a good time, and you're not letting it get to you or get you upset, that's what matters. And yeah, sure, it's gonna get frustrated every now and then, but just try to have a positive outlook on it. And I know this sounds like probably like maybe empty advice, honestly, but okay, yeah, back in the day, I'm not gonna lie, back in World of Warcraft days when I was pretty hardcore with it, pretty serious with it, I got so hell-bent over it and I got so upset and it was unnecessary. Now that I look at it, I don't even remember why I got so upset over it. I mean, first of all, it's a video game, so it's not that big of a deal. Second of all, raiding is supposed to be fun. Yes, it's supposed to be challenging, especially if you're doing things like, mythic or heroic in World of Warcraft, or I guess the equivalent would be savage, raiding, and extreme primals. They're supposed to be challenges, they're supposed to be a challenge, and the reward should be technically worth the challenge. So don't get so hell-bent over it. Have fun, joke around. I mean, even if you see me live streaming with, other people whenever we play Final Fantasy XIV, we're not so serious about it. We joke around a lot, we do puns, we, talk about Final Fantasy memes, it's whatever, we just have fun, we just have a good time. Joke around, laugh at our mistakes, laugh at things that happen, laugh at silly situations, and overall I feel like we create a pretty positive environment, pretty positive atmosphere, and I hope we can also entertain the audiences that are watching us as well, and making sure that it's a more positive outlook on raiding, even though we do wipe a lot. Nevertheless, having a positive outlook in this kind of thing is a lot more important than anything else. I mean, as long as you have fun and having a good time and, you know, enjoying yourself, even if you are struggling or even if you are taking on something challenging, as long as you're not, you know, dreading it or feel miserable doing it, I think that's the only thing that matters. And if you are, it's fine to take a step back from it and not, you know, not let it get to you too much. Just kind of step back from it and don't sweat the small stuff, I guess, in a way. We've been doing a lot of these proverbs for this video. I have no idea why. I guess it kind of makes sense. Nevertheless, I'm gonna go ahead and actually wrap up right on here. Hopefully this helps you out and maybe kind of introduces you and lets you look into my outlook on reading a little bit more. I'm not sure how useful this video is gonna be. I hope it, you know, helps somebody out there. Anyway, gonna be putting out more Final Fantasy XIV commentaries soon in the future, a little bit more serious, especially when Stormblood is out. Nevertheless, hope you enjoyed. My name is Riel. Like, subscribe, and as always, have a good day. And I'll see you all in next video on Final Fantasy XIV. See ya!